My mission is to study various solar systems and planets. Select the most suitable for colonization.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the channel if this is your first time. If this is your first time, then, and you were attracted by the title of the video, I do have a Children of Time review, which I did when I first read it. So that was a few years ago, at least 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. I think it was 3 years ago. But anyway, it was early on in the channel. And I'm much more detailed about that book in that video than I'm going to be in this video. So the reason is that I want this to be something that hopefully will appeal to people who have read all three books and people who have not read them as well. Which means I'm going to give a kind of a, not really a spoiler, like more like a back cover kind of spoilery thing for this, and then I'm going to be as vague as I can about these two while making a useful video. So I'm going to be talking about how I feel about the three books, and ultimately Adrian Tchaikovsky has become one of my favorite writers, so it's going to be mostly positive, but I do have some gripes with the books, so I will get onto that in a minute. But just to clarify, this is not going to be a massive deep dive with loads of spoilers on any of the three books, but there will be more spoilers in this one because I need to set up what's happening in this because it flows on to the other two. But I don't think it's going to be the sort of thing that will spoil the reading because, I mean, the process of reading this is so enjoyable anyway. I wouldn't want to spoil it for you. But I think even when I read it, I knew a little bit about the plot. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the plot. So this put Adrian Tchaikovsky on the map in a big way. It did win the Arthur C. Clarke Award, but the important thing was that he is a very prolific writer. I mean, he's writing stuff all the time. He's chucking loads of books out, and some people have actually become quite cynical about whether or not he can write that well, writing that much stuff, and just won't read him because of that, or they're put off by him. But I would like to address that for a second and just say that Adrian Tchaikovsky treats it as a job, so he is writing all day, every day. And if he's doing that, and he's got an idea, and he fleshes it out like plans it out properly, like he must have done with these books, then. If he can write, he's a really good writer as far as his prose and the way he writes characters and all that sort of stuff. Then I don't really see that writing a lot is gonna be detrimental if it's something he puts a lot of time in. If he was releasing a lot of stuff but actually not really putting a lot of time in it, that's different. But he treats it like a 9-to-5 job. So I do think that. I think you should read the author's stuff before you start assuming it's bad because he writes a lot. Because I've seen that a few times. People that should know better as well. People who call themselves experts or think they're, an authority on science fiction or on fiction in general. They'll say that kind of thing and you just think, well, it's just a weird criticism if you know how much time they put into their job. So I thought it was worth addressing that. So, this really put his name on the map, and now he has, like I said, he has released a lot of books, and I think any visit to Waterstones, and probably Barnes & Noble, I don't know, but certainly in this country, any visit to Waterstones, there's usually at least, even the smaller branches, there's at least 4 of his books, and if it's a big branch, there's probably about 10 or 12 of his books on the shelf, and, he's clearly a really big seller, but... this was part of a trilogy. I will say that this does have a finite ending, and if you feel like you're someone who doesn't want to read a big old trilogy, then this is very satisfying. It's not one of those things that ends on a cliffhanger. It ends totally complete, and that could be because he decided to do the other two later. I don't know. They do go off in different directions, so it's not one of those things where he decided to artificially carry on the story with the same characters because, you know, it had this finite ending and he wanted to keep going for economic reasons. It's nothing like that, because the other two start from a different place and go off in a different direction and explore different things. So I think he liked the approach to this and the worlds he'd set up, plural, deliberately, and clearly he wanted to keep that going with those and create more worlds. So yeah, that's a thing. So you could read this on its own, and it's worth saying that he didn't write those other two by artificially pretending that this hadn't finished. He went off in a different direction, and I think that was a good move. I think if he had finished this so perfectly, and then I don't know, somehow some sort of retrofit occurred, and then he was able to sort of carry on with the same thing, it would seem like a massive cash grab. It wouldn't work. It would be a bit weird. But what he chose to do in both the other books was very clever. So anyway, this is a series of books that are basically exploring space exploration, but it's exploring terraforming, exploring the evolution of different species. It covers thousands of years of time, loads of different areas of space. The scale is huge, and there's lots of kind of thoughts about consequence, and he did a lot of research about the animal's behavior, because one of the things that's consistent in all three books is there are humans in all of them, but there's also some kind of animal upscale in evolution in all three of them as well. So he did a lot of research about the animals that he was dealing with, because they become main characters. I mean, the main protagonists in this story are spiders, which you may have heard about, because this is quite a famous book now. And there's a huge part of this book, the second book, which are about octopuses. And apparently, by the way, the correct way of pluralizing octopus is octopuses, because it comes from the Greek, apparently. So it's not Latin, which is why you might feel that it's right to go octopi, which would be if it was Latin. Anyway, Tchaikovsky actually uses various different pluralizing of the word in the book anyway. But there are octopuses in this one. And then in this one, there's a raven kind of character in this as well, which I don't think he necessarily did a lot of research for the ravens in this, because I don't think they necessarily... there's things they do in the third book don't suggest that he needed to research much for what they do in the book. But they do feature... They're one of the best things about the third book, actually. So yeah, there is a consistency in the fact that the evolution of different species is explored in the three books. But consistent through all three is this idea of human exploration, and that's because they need to expand, because Earth is no longer fit for living. So they have to find new worlds, and these are technically three different examples of that happening. So that's why I said that you can praise him for not just retreading the same planet and coming up with different scenarios for the same planet. They are different planets. They are different situations and different ecosystems, different consequences for being on different planets. So this one ends up being Kern's world, because the initial leader of the expedition to terraform a planet is Avram Kern, and she's a scientist who is consistent in all the books, because spoilers, I won't tell you why she's consistent in all the books, but she is a huge part of this book, and this book basically goes between two different setups. One is these humans that are trying to stay alive, basically, is one of the most gripping things about that, I think. They're trying to find a way to keep the species alive, knowing that there's not many humans left. So that's one part of it. And there's unrest among the humans. There's lots of conflict amongst humans in a very real and brilliantly characterized way. And I found that really gripping. Also, another thing I found gripping was the other part of this book, which is a big part of this book, which is the evolution of the spiders. So basically, right at the beginning of the book, they try and terraform a planet, but it doesn't quite work. They try to basically give this virus to monkeys to make the monkeys evolve, but it doesn't work, and it ends up being successful on spiders. And through this book, you see the development of the society, the culture, the language, and the political standing and domination of spiders on that planet. And it's just incredible. It's absolutely incredible. I can't fault this book at all. So as I said, there are going to be criticism I'm going to say, but they're actually in the other two books. I can't fault this book. It was really gripping. The pace is amazing. Everything about the way he wrote that made me want to keep reading it. And I read it very quickly, considering it's a very big book. It's, what is it? Yeah, it's almost 600 pages, which is big for me. It usually takes me a while to read a 600-page book. But it only took me a few days. I just could not put it down. I loved it so much. This is different from the other two because I do think it's faultless. It's just amazing. So I would recommend anyone who reads science fiction to read this one at least. Read this one if you read science fiction, if you like science fiction. I don't know if it's a good thing to read if you're just curious about science fiction, because it's quite big and it's about specific things. It is about evolution and it is about spatial exploration, and you may not connect to the characters because it's quite... I don't know, people who really love hard science fiction, they might not see it as hard science fiction as something like Stephen Baxter or Alistair Reynolds or something like that. But I think it is. It's enough in that direction that I'd be hesitant to suggest that as a first science fiction novel. But it is absolutely amazing. And if you are someone who is up for the idea of reading a 600-page novel about that kind of thing, it really is phenomenal. So yeah, I loved everything about this. And actually, you end up really caring about the spiders in it. It's characterized so well that you really do care. So, I have to say, it's just amazing. So he followed that up with Children of Ruin. And Children of Ruin does a very clever thing. Again, it's quite big. It's not as big, but it's quite big. He does a very clever thing, and he decides to, rather than just carry on with the same planet and the same characters, he goes in a different direction. And in this one, these are different terraformers, so a different set of humans, and this is about two particular planets, Damascus and Nod, and they're very different things. And if you like, they bring about different challenges, and they are very different parts of the book. The tone of this changes a lot. I would say that there's a lighter tone to this one. I think this is quite a dark book. And even the stuff that's not obviously dark, which I'll get to in a moment, the tone of the prose in this book, I think, is just a little bit more downbeat. It's a little bit less bouncy. So I don't know if that means anything to you guys, but this is a tougher read, I think, just from the tone of the prose. It's just the way it's written that I found it. It's not one that I couldn't put down. I could put it down, and then I'd pick it up a few days later and go, I'll read some more. And it's very good. It's very clever. It's very clever the way that, in essence, it seems similar to this, but it's actually different. And he goes in a different direction. All that stuff's brilliant, but the actual feeling of reading it is different. But on Damascus and Nod, two very different things happen. So this is a book that definitely explores a water world where one particular scientist has a pet project where they slowly get into the idea of evolving octopuses. And the octopuses feature a lot in this book, and that's a really cool part of the book. And there's another part of the book that's really cool. The other end of the book, the nod part of the book, where there's this mysterious, strange, creepy alien species, which is not really fully explained straight away, and there's this sort of really nice sense of suspense in it, and it's very dark, and it's very kind of disturbing, which is really cool. So it does have a different tone to it from that point of view. So yeah, this is very good, and it's a very clever way of doing a sequel to a book that had such a great final ending. But for me, it's my least favorite, because it wasn't the actual. This wasn't as enjoyable, but it definitely gave me some good brain food, but it didn't touch me as much, if that makes any sense. So the third one, Children of Memory, I've just recently finished. This was a return to a more empathic experience. So I was definitely more invested in the characters than I was in the second one, and it was not as dark. It wasn't as serious, I guess, for me. And again, it's still a nice chunky thing. So that one was 564 pages or something, and this was slightly smaller. This is 500 pages. And I'd say that there is a dip in the middle of that one. There is a dip in the middle of this one, a little bit, not as big a dip in pacing. So I do think that this one suffers from having a dip in the middle as well. And this is taking place on a planet called Emir, which is another terraformed planet. But it's a terraformed planet where they get there, and it's a very difficult one to terraform, and it's not quite working. But it centers on a town called Landfall, and in particular a character called Liv. And Liv is very endearing. She's a young girl who has this very strong bond with her grandfather, who was one of the original settlers on Emir. What I've just said there is not 100% true, but if I told you why it isn't true, there'd be spoilers. But that's what's set up at the beginning. And Liv's life, her sort of day-to-day life, and her relationship with her teacher Miranda is a really nice way that the book begins. But there's this mystery running through it, which is kind of interesting, and you're wondering what Tchaikovsky keeps alluding to when he keeps talking about this thing that's on the planet that is waiting to erupt or waiting to interact with these settlers, and you're waiting for this thing to happen. Plus, he brings out the characters and species from the other books as well. So it ends up that you've got this exploration of Liv's life and the life of this colony on Emir, but you've also got Fabian, Portia, Paul, all these people from the other books turn up to interact with this planet, and it becomes a very interesting conclusion to the three books. Apparently there might be a fourth one, but this works as a conclusion. But I will say I wasn't really sold on the ending. So this mysterious thing, I didn't really connect to it. So the ending kind of starts quite late in. So I'd say not until it's at least there. So, there's a lot of book to get through before you start really finding out what this mysterious thing is. And then when it does happen, I was like, oh really? And as it gets explained to finish the book, I got it, but it wasn't really what I was hoping for. And it's fine, but it wasn't quite as exciting as the rest of the trilogy. So I was disappointed by the ending, the surprise ending. don't think it's is it a twist? Yeah, twist ending, I guess. Don't know. Again, I don't want to put any spoilers in it, but it's massively worth reading. I did enjoy it, and I enjoyed it more than the second one, but I did enjoy the second one, so I did definitely really enjoy this. And if you enjoyed this one, I think you'll definitely enjoy this one, but I do think that's the best one. So yeah, it was an enjoyable experience, and I really like the character work in this one in particular. Miranda's character is really good and fully developed in this one as well, and Miranda's a kind of a mix of lots of different things, but definitely affected by the stuff that was happening on the planet Nod in the other book, in the second book. But her stuff's really good, and Liv is a very lovely character. There's as I said before, I think in the beginning of the video, these ravens are one of the sort of upscaled species in this, and those two characters, that the main ravens in this, are very enjoyable to read, very very endearing characters. So there we are. An amazing achievement, I think. He's clearly a brilliant writer, and I'd love to know what you think of these books down below. Some people have said that they loved Children of Ruin as much as Children of Time, and they didn't like Children of Memory as much, and maybe for the same reason. Maybe they didn't like the ending much, I don't know. But for me, I personally thought the second one was the weakest one, really because of pacing, and the connection with the characters wasn't strong for me. So I think that was what I was trying to say earlier. Okay, thanks a lot for watching. Please put your comments below and stay curious, everybody.